Have you ever looked at one of those timeless stars, someone who's been making people laugh and smile for generations, and wondered what secrets might be hidden behind that trademark grin? For many fans, Dick Van Dyke represents the pinnacle of wholesome entertainment. He's the affable Rob Petrie, the dancing chimney sweep named Bert, the fatherly doctor solving crimes on daytime television. But behind the perfectly choreographed dance steps and the ever-present smile, the man born Richard Wayne Van Dyke has faced trials, heartbreak, addiction, and regret. The question that keeps surfacing is whether he truly despised someone along the way, or if the real conflict was with himself. By peeling back layers of his nearly century-long life, we begin to see that his real story is a tapestry woven from dazzling success, bitter rivalries, and a determination to find joy in spite of everything. Dick Van Dyke's tale begins humbly enough in the small town of West Plains, Missouri, on December 13, 1925. Born into a family of modest means, he wouldn't remain there for long. His parents soon moved to Danville, Illinois, seeking better work opportunities. During the Great Depression, virtually everyone in Danville felt the sting of limited resources. Entertainment was scarce. Van Dyke would tag along to a neighbor's house just to hear radio programs, captivated by the power of voices and sound effects to transport listeners into entire worlds of laughter or drama. There was no inkling then that he would one day craft similar moments of joy for people across the globe. But something lit up inside him every time he heard a comedic skit crackle over the airwaves. What made Danville so interesting was its unexpected record of producing celebrated performers. It wasn't just Dick Van Dyke who sprouted from its unassuming streets. Donald O'Connor, famed for his role in Singin' in the Rain, and singer Bobby Short also hailed from this Midwestern locale. This microcosm of talent proved that even small-town kids could rise to national fame if they had enough passion and grit. Van Dyke's first brush with performance, however, was not quite the glamorous stage, but the local high school drama club. As a tall teen with a strong voice and a flair for comedic timing, he garnered lead roles in various school plays. Because wartime restrictions meant they couldn't buy rights to established musicals, they made up their own. For Van Dyke, the boundless creativity required in those makeshift productions was thrilling. It ignited his imagination in a way that mere radio shows couldn't match. World War II intervened before he could fully delve into professional entertainment. Eager to serve, the lanky teen discovered a frustrating hurdle. At 6'1" and just 135 pounds, he was underweight for the Army Air Forces. Rather than abandon his goal, he ate bananas and drank copious amounts of water on the day of his weigh-in just to tip the scale in his favor. He finally made it through, prepared to train as a pilot. But as fate would have it, he soon realized the cockpit was not his destiny. Instead, he was transferred to a special services unit, where his real gift, making audiences laugh, was cultivated. He painted sets, performed in shows to entertain the troops, and found himself in front of a microphone more often than he might have expected. What might have been disappointment over flying turned into the spark of a future in show business. When he returned home after the war, the world of broadcasting called. Without any formal experience, Van Dyke marched into a small radio station in Danville, WDAN, and requested an audition. His innate knack for comedy became clear the minute he started improvising silly voices, comic sketches, and offbeat interviews. He soon transformed a simple morning time slot into one of the most popular segments in the area. His stunts often bordered on the outrageous. One memorable April Fool's Day prank had him announcing that a UFO had landed, spurring panicked phone calls to local law enforcement. While station management was initially alarmed, the publicity boosted his popularity. Soon he realized that he needed to take his comedic talents to bigger venues. Opportunity arrived in the form of Phil Erickson, a performer specializing in pantomime. Together they formed Eric and Van, the Merry Mutes, a silent comedy act that defied entertainment norms of the day. There was no dialogue, no big orchestra, just two guys lip-syncing to classic tunes, mugging their way through comedic sketches. Club audiences, used to traditional comedians or lounge singers, were entranced by the novelty of their performance. They worked tirelessly, sometimes doing multiple shows per night, which honed Van Dyke's comedic timing to a razor's edge. By the early 1950s, they'd been featured on major TV variety programs, including The Ed Sullivan Show, and Van Dyke was well on his way to a broader kind of fame. Eventually, Erickson opted out of showbiz, but Van Dyke pushed forward. In the mid-1950s, he found himself hosting various programs on CBS, including a short-lived game show. His true break, however, awaited him on Broadway. Starring in a musical called The Girls Against the Boys might sound unremarkable now, given that it ran just a couple of weeks, but critics singled him out as a bright talent. His knack for physical comedy and boyish charm led to an even bigger show, Bye Bye Birdie. Landing the role of Albert Peterson was the equivalent of his comedic dreams taking flight. Audiences loved him so much that he took home a Tony Award, no small feat for someone with minimal theatrical background. This achievement on The Great White Way then paved the path to what would become his defining television role. While on Broadway, Van Dyke caught the eye of Carl Reiner, a brilliant writer and performer hoping to develop a sitcom that captured the essence of working in television. The original idea was for Reiner himself to star in The Dick Van Dyke Show, then working titled Head of the Family. But producers like Sheldon Leonard felt Reiner wasn't the perfect on-screen match they were hoping for. They saw something in Van Dyke, perhaps that warmth, that physical humor, that slight bewilderment in his eyes that made him instantly sympathetic. Legend has it that Johnny Carson was also being considered for the role of Rob Petrie, but the tide turned in Van Dyke's favor shortly before shooting began. CBS, uncertain but willing to roll the dice, finally greenlit Van Dyke just weeks before production. The rest, as they say, is TV history. Strangely enough, despite the comedic gold that we now associate with The Dick Van Dyke Show, it was almost canceled after its first season due to underwhelming ratings. CBS executives were prepared to pull the plug, but Procter & Gamble, a major advertiser, stepped in. They threatened to yank their ad dollars from other CBS programs if the network dropped this new sitcom they believed in. Under that corporate lifeline, the show continued and soared in its second season, vaulting into the top 10. Over the next few years, the series evolved into a cultural phenomenon, beloved for its blend of workplace humor and heartwarming family moments. However, behind the facade of domestic bliss, tension simmered. Mary Tyler Moore, 11 years younger than Van Dyke, was cast as his TV wife, Laura Petrie. Their on-screen chemistry became legendary, but it began under some uncertainty. Van Dyke himself reportedly expressed doubts about Moore's age, fearing the audience might not accept her as his spouse. Carl Reiner insisted that viewers wouldn't mind, and the gamble paid off spectacularly once the cameras rolled. Moore displayed extraordinary comedic timing, a graceful dancing talent, and a fresh-faced sincerity that resonated with 1960s America. In fact, she shone so brightly that another cast member, Rose Marie, felt sidelined. With a vaudeville background and experience in films, Rose Marie had come to the show expecting to be the principal female star. Suddenly, she found herself overshadowed by the newcomer in capri pants. According to rumors, she confronted Carl Reiner about the distribution of screen time, only to receive the half-joking reply that executives simply liked Mary Tyler Moore's legs. Such an offhand explanation stoked the flames of resentment. Though the show maintained a cheerful atmosphere on screen, it was far from picture-perfect once "cut" was called. While professional jealousies were playing out, Van Dyke's personal life was undergoing its own upheaval. Despite his ever-present grin and a successful marriage of sorts, he had married his longtime partner, Margie Willett, in 1948. The cracks in that union began to widen. Margie disliked the Hollywood limelight, preferring a quiet life far away from endless photo ops and star-studded gatherings. Meanwhile, Van Dyke's ascent to stardom placed him squarely in the whirlwind of events, premieres, and parties. This disconnect drew them apart, creating a gulf that fame only exacerbated. Adding to the strain, Van Dyke was dealing with a growing alcohol problem. He's spoken candidly about how it sneaked up on him. What started as a casual social habit to ease tension became a daily crutch. He performed comedic roles that exuded exuberance and positivity, but away from the spotlight, he found himself plagued by self-doubt and anxiety. Drinking seemed to soothe these discomforts. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, it had become unmanageable. He checked into a hospital in 1972 for treatment, finally admitting he needed help before alcoholism dragged him down any further. It was a staggering self-realization for a man whose public image was squeaky clean, someone who seemed to inhabit an entirely carefree universe. Though his star never faded, he did face professional disappointments. After ending the Dick Van Dyke Show on a high note in 1966, he ventured into different genres, including more serious roles. In the comic, for instance, he played a silent film comedian whose personal demons led to a tragic downfall. The film tested Van Dyke's range, revealing more depth than many realize. It didn't dominate the box office, but over time it gained appreciation as a more introspective piece about fame's darker side. Hollywood producers remained eager to exploit Van Dyke's comedic gifts. He starred in the film adaptation of Bye Bye Birdie, though he bristled at how the script tilted in favor of Anne Margaret's character. Then along came Mary Poppins, arguably the role that would cement him as a global star.
Because I was afraid to speak when I was just a lad. My father gave me nails a tweak and told me I was bad.
Portraying the lovable chimney sweep Bert, Van Dyke danced and sang his way into the hearts of millions. Critics pounced on his Cockney accent, mocking its inauthenticity. Van Dyke later admitted it was dreadful, though he pointed out that his dialect coach was Irish and didn't have much expertise in Cockney either. Despite that glaring shortfall, he was unstoppable on screen, especially in that iconic Step in Time sequence. Filming these high-energy dance numbers took a toll on him physically, but the final product was a cinematic marvel. Kids everywhere adored Bert, and parents admired Van Dyke's ability to radiate joy. The film soared at the box office and garnered multiple awards. Riding that wave of success, he went on to star in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, this time playing an eccentric inventor who fathered two imaginative children and tinkered with a flying car. The production itself was arduous. Van Dyke joked about his inability to drive a stick shift, necessitating special gear shifts so filming wouldn't be delayed by his mechanical limitations. Still, the role matched him perfectly: comedic, charming, and family-friendly. As if these roles weren't enough to define an era, he also attempted to return to the small screen with the new Dick Van Dyke Show in 1971. This time, the series tackled subjects like interracial dating that would have been taboo in the early 1960s. However, it never resonated with viewers quite like its predecessor. Tensions behind the scenes, arguments over storylines, network restrictions, and a controversial episode about an Army cavalry that CBS banned led to Carl Reiner's departure. Without Reiner's guiding vision, the show floundered and ended in 1974. All the while, Van Dyke's personal life reached a breaking point when he began an affair with Michelle Triola, who worked for his agent. Though he initially tried to keep it hidden from Margie, the strain became too great. Once the truth emerged, separation ensued, ultimately leading to their divorce in 1984. The man who had seemed so steady and unflappable now revealed a far more human side, wrestling with addiction, heartbreak, and the complexities of stardom. Although fans were largely unaware at the time, Van Dyke's squeaky clean image concealed a storm of emotional struggles. Yet he managed to channel those difficulties into his work, maintaining a level of professional excellence that few could match. Following the ups and downs of his film and TV ventures, Van Dyke found renewed success in 1993 with Diagnosis Murder. Playing Dr. Mark Sloan, a genial physician who solved crimes on the side, he opened another chapter in his career. This series delighted older fans who had grown up with him, but it also introduced him to younger audiences. Having his real-life son, Barry Van Dyke, play his on-screen offspring lent the show a familial warmth that mirrored the more wholesome aspects of his earlier career. Running for 8 seasons, Diagnosis Murder reaffirmed that audiences still crave Van Dyke's brand of humor and heart, especially when mixed with a bit of crime-solving intrigue. And it was here that many recognized his remarkable consistency. Whether dressed in a 1960s suit or a 1990s lab coat, Van Dyke remained a captivating presence. Simultaneously, he poured his energies into philanthropic endeavors and personal growth. He overcame his drinking, maintained a long-lasting relationship with Michelle Triola, until her passing, and eventually married makeup artist Arlene Silver, decades his junior. Far from slowing down in his senior years, Van Dyke kept busy. In 2006, he appeared in the blockbuster Night at the Museum, playing a mischievous security guard, dancing and jumping over counters in his 80s. Audiences were astonished that the same man who had taught the world to say, "Chim chim chair E," was still spry enough to perform minor stunts and comedic routines. In 2018, he made a cameo in Mary Poppins Returns, where he famously tap danced on a desk. Cast members half his age marveled at his stamina and effervescence. How could a man in his 90s still exude so much zest for performance? Van Dyke credited his daily workout routine, a positive outlook, and the unwavering support of Arlene. Here was living proof that age might slow the body somewhat, but it couldn't extinguish that core love of entertaining. As for honors, they piled up over the decades. He took home multiple Emmys for The Dick Van Dyke Show, another for variety specials, and decades later, he stunned people by winning another Emmy at age 98 for a guest role in Days of Our Lives, becoming one of the oldest recipients of that prestigious award. His house was already overflowing with accolades like the Television Hall of Fame induction, a Grammy for the Mary Poppins soundtrack, and a Disney Legends Award. In 2021, the Kennedy Center recognized him for lifetime contributions to American culture. At every ceremony, he delivered thank you speeches, brimming with humility and jokes, never missing a chance to poke fun at his own famously flawed Cockney accent. But despite all these glittering tributes, fans remained intrigued by rumors that Van Dyke once harbored deep animosity toward a colleague. Did he truly hate someone on set? Or was the tension exaggerated by gossip? His candor late in life offered clues. He acknowledged friction with Rose Marie. He admitted he was unsure about Mary Tyler Moore at first. He even confessed to harboring a secret crush on Mary, though nothing ever came of it. And he explained that certain professional snubs, like being overshadowed by Anne Margaret in Bye Bye Birdie, had stung him. Yet he rarely singled out any one person as the true focus of hatred. More often, he spoke of disappointment in situations, or recognized that he himself contributed to the friction through his insecurity. The more one reads his interviews, the clearer it becomes that the hatred was probably pointed inward, a mixture of frustration at his own shortcomings and regret for how he handled personal relationships under pressure. Perhaps that self-reflection explains why, in his advanced years, Van Dyke radiates gratitude and positivity. He's spoken about how discovering faith and spirituality grounded him, how reading extensively about theology and philosophy provided comfort when life felt overwhelming. Many marvel at how he manages to be so upbeat after losing close loved ones, wrestling with addiction, going through a long divorce, and seeing his private flaws dragged into the public eye. Yet through it all, he maintained a capacity for wonder and a mission to make people laugh. One particularly poignant chapter involves the loss of his granddaughter to an illness, which prompted Van Dyke to educate parents about certain medical risks. Even in grief, he sought to harness his celebrity for good. This continual act of sharing, whether it was comedic talent or heartfelt cautionary tales, became the driving force behind his enduring popularity. People don't just see him as the actor who tripped over an ottoman on TV. They see him as a genuine human being, full of vulnerabilities but always pushing forward. As the decades rolled on, new revelations popped up, especially once he neared the century mark. Interviews given after Michelle Triola's passing in 2009 showcased the depth of his affection for her and the remorse he felt for the way his first marriage ended. He has never shied away from saying that he was at fault, that he created pain for those around him, and that success sometimes distorted his moral compass. Yet he also stands as a testament to the idea that admitting mistakes and making amends can lead to personal rebirth. This blend of humility and optimism is what continues to amaze people about him, fueling discussions about how someone so outwardly positive could have wrestled with such private darkness. Even among younger generations, some of whom might know him primarily from viral videos, he's revered as a symbol of everlasting joy and comedic tradition.
You say it loud enough, you always sound precocious. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Clips of him dancing with his wife Arlene go viral on social media, each time racking up millions of views. The man's unstoppable energy and flamboyant sense of fun demonstrate that genuine happiness can shine even after a century of ups and downs. The watchers might not know the full context, his sometimes contentious working relationships, his decades-long fight with alcohol, his heartbreak over a deteriorating marriage, or his hidden crushes. But perhaps the knowledge that he endured all that and still found a reason to dance is precisely what makes him so inspiring. When asked outright if he hates anyone, Van Dyke tends to shrug off the notion. He has recounted specific showbiz tensions, recounted feelings of frustration, but rarely, if ever, does he direct vitriol toward another person. And maybe that's the most telling detail of all. For a man who danced with animated penguins, soared off with a flying car, and coaxed belly laughs out of millions, the biggest obstacle was never a rival co-star. It was the self-doubt, the isolation of fame, and the creeping sense that, beneath the perfect comedic timing, there were unresolved personal issues he had to confront. Such honesty resonates powerfully with those who have felt overshadowed or consumed by their own regrets. As he nears 100 years old, tributes continue pouring in. Television specials, magazine cover stories, and documentary segments recount how countless sitcoms, variety shows, and even modern reality TV borrowed techniques pioneered by the Dick Van Dyke Show. Film historians point out how his dance anywhere approach freed male leads from the stoic hero mold, proving that charm and humor could be as compelling as raw dramatic intensity. Younger comedians cite him as an influence, praising his seamless blend of physical comedy and empathetic storytelling. In one of his more revealing public remarks, Van Dyke mentioned that part of what kept him going was the knowledge that he could still contribute to people's happiness. Even well into his 90s, he found new fans, some discovering his black and white reruns, others laughing at his cameo as a mischievous museum guard, and still others captivated by footage of him stepping up onto a desk in Mary Poppins Returns. For all the grandeur that typically accompanies a lifetime of accolades, he's surprisingly unaffected, often saying he still doesn't fully grasp what people see in him. And therein lies his charm. That blend of modesty and unquenchable spirit has become his hallmark. Which brings us back to that persistent rumor. Did he truly hate a particular co-star, a director, or an executive? Or was the rumor simply an exaggerated game of whisper that spun out of small behind-the-scenes clashes? From all available evidence, including his own words, the real hatred might have been fleeting frustrations or resentment that never hardened into lifelong animosity. Indeed, the deeper truth emerges in late-in-life confessions about grappling with self-doubt and guilt over betrayals of his own moral code. If we're looking for a villain in Dick Van Dyke's story, it's more apt to point a finger at the insidious pull of addiction or the unstoppable tide of celebrity pressures. Casting blame on a single person seems not only unfair, but also contrary to the uplifting example he sets. And in a way, that might be the most reassuring part of his legacy. Here's a man whose life is filled with enviable achievements, iconic TV shows, blockbuster musicals, and armload of awards. And yet, when he talks about his past, it's never with the arrogance of someone who thinks he's above it all. He's the first to confess how fear or insecurity led him astray. He's the first to admit that he nearly lost himself to a bottle. He's the first to say that marriage can be complicated, that success doesn't guarantee personal happiness, and that sometimes people make mistakes they can never fully undo. But he is also the first to hop back on stage, microphone in hand, hopeful smile at the ready. As we watch him close in on 100, it's difficult not to be awestruck by his sheer vitality. Even in video clips recorded just a few years ago, he was dancing with his a cappella group, the Fantastics, beaming as though no time had passed since his black and white sitcom days. It's a living demonstration that the body may age, but the spirit can remain youthful. For those who grew up watching him trip over that ottoman in the living room, or for those who discovered him much later as the kindly museum guard with a twinkle in his eye, his enduring presence feels like a comforting reminder that joy persists. So as we consider the question of hatred, perhaps we should reframe it. Did Dick Van Dyke hate a particular person or role so intensely that it haunted him? Or is it more accurate to say he wrestled with the idea of failing to be the man he wanted to be? Failing to uphold the gentle, positive image that the public adored? We might never have a neat and tidy answer. The tension between who we are and who we aspire to be is universal, and Van Dyke's life is an extraordinary example of that human conflict. Still, he proved that humor, music, and the willingness to keep moving, literally dancing through life, can conquer even the darkest chapters. In many of his interviews, Van Dyke ends on a note of optimistic reflection. He'll talk about how every slip or misstep taught him something valuable, how each heartbreak gave him empathy, and how every cast member, no matter their personal friction, ultimately contributed to something memorable. He's grateful for Carl Reiner's belief in him, grateful for Mary Tyler Moore's brilliance, grateful even for the controversies that sharpened his perspective on what really matters. When asked what keeps him feeling young, he often jokes that it's simply about keeping your legs moving, both metaphorically and literally. That childlike sense of wonder might be his greatest superpower. If you find yourself charmed by his dances in Mary Poppins, or amused by the iconic trip over the Ottoman, remember that these light-hearted moments are built on top of profound struggles. Those comedic highlights are inseparable from the real man who fought through alcohol dependency, navigated messy relationships, and juggled the weight of public adoration with private fear. Nothing about his longevity in show business was handed to him. He worked relentlessly, shaped comedic landscapes, and weathered heartbreak. And somehow he did so without losing the twinkle in his eye. As he stands on the brink of 100, it's clear that Dick Van Dyke's journey encompasses far more than just songs and sitcom smiles. His story extends into all the complexities that define a full human life: love, betrayal, reinvention, success, loss, and second chances. The notion that he might have hated someone pales in comparison to the revelation that he sometimes loathed aspects of himself. His reliance on alcohol, his dishonesty with his first wife, or his failure to fully protect his own well-being under the strain of fame. Yet these confessions do not tarnish his legacy. On the contrary, they make him relatable, a legend who never forgets he's still just a person with flaws. In the end, it may be precisely because of these hidden conflicts that he is still so admired. The sincerity he brings to every public appearance isn't just a cultivated celebrity act, it's rooted in a genuine appreciation for having survived a gauntlet of personal and professional challenges. He once said that show business saved him because it gave him a place to channel all that nervous energy. But to his fans, it feels like he saved show business, preserving a style of comedic warmth and physical humor that remains timeless. Instead of bitterness, he offers acceptance. Instead of blaming others, he shoulders responsibility for his mistakes. And instead of retreating from the public eye, he embraces new roles and fresh opportunities, continuing to share his gifts as long as he has the strength to do so. So, was there hatred in Dick Van Dyke's heart? At certain moments, perhaps anger or sorrow flashed through him, as happens with anyone struggling to balance personal truth with public persona. Yet his true legacy isn't defined by who he might have resented. It's defined by the wealth of laughter and music he brought to the world, even while wrestling with his own demons. His lasting message is one of resilience and kindness, not just to others, but to oneself. If there's a moral to his story, it's that it's never too late to confront your failings, make amends, and keep dancing. From small-town boy in Danville to venerable Hollywood icon, Dick Van Dyke ultimately shows us that joy and pain can coexist, and that a radiant spirit can triumph over almost anything. He might never fully live down that questionable Cockney accent in Mary Poppins, or the comedic stumbles of certain TV ventures that didn't quite catch on, but those are small footnotes in a career that redefined television and film for generations. Whenever that beaming grin crosses his face and he lets loose one of those sprightly jigs, seemingly without regard for the limitations of age, it's a gentle reminder that life, even at its hardest, can be met with a song and a shuffle. Perhaps that's the ultimate secret behind his longevity, the conviction that a spark of optimism is always within reach. For as long as Dick Van Dyke graces the stage or the screen, we're reminded that we too can tap into that simple, unstoppable joy,
So put on a hat.